Retro Future.
Hello everyone, this is Bonsard of Radio Retro Future, and today I want to talk about an anime I watched, Violet Evergarden, a anime that was highly recommended to me. I watched it and it has had a profound effect on me. But it also made me realize something regarding the difference between Eastern and Western media and how it is written. But during the writing of this script, I realized something rather surprising. Violet Evergarden's structure is very similar to those typically used in Shonen, a collection of anime and manga typically meant for boys 13 years and older. A weird choice for a shonen that's well known for its intense drama, but for some reason it makes sense. Violet's robot-like persona at the start of the show. I don't really want to defend this portrayal of her condition, but in this video I want to explain the difference in how characters are written and depicted in, let's say, Hollywood and Japan, using Shonen as an example. But first let's talk about Violet Evergarden, the series that inspired the making of this video in the first place. Violet Evergarden has a very basic premise. It's about a young woman who only knows war. She served in this world's version of the First World War as a super soldier of sorts, whose origins are never revealed. But by the end of the war, she loses both her arms. These wounds can be replaced with cybernetic prosthetics, but what could not be replaced was her major, who died in the final engagement of the war. The story begins with Violet waking up in a hospital. The war is over now, and she is greeted by Captain Claudia Hodgins, an old friend of her superior officer. Here, Violet acts like a robot, incapable to understand human emotion or catch all the obvious hints of Hodgins' behavior that the Major is dead. At this point, all Violet has known is the battlefield and is constantly asking for new orders. Out of hopelessness, Hodgins uses this to his advantage and tells Violet he is relaying the Major's orders, which are to go with him and, well, start a new life of her own. To help her out, Hodgins offers her a job at his new business, the CH Postal Company. But this company doesn't just deliver letters, it also offers ghostwriting services. So-called auto-memory dolls write letters for the largely illiterate population of the city of Leiden, but also for the well-off people who want their feelings properly expressed in letters to their loved ones. Long story short, Violet takes on the family name Evergarden and becomes a auto-memory doll in order to learn the meaning of the last words the Major ever spoke to her. In the beginning, this goes as well as you can imagine, but halfway the series he becomes a very popular ghostwriter, writing for people of all walks of life. And that is it. Most episodes are standalone stories about people she serves, writing for people who are thinking about the future, but also for individuals who are confronted with death. Now, before I go on, you need to understand this is not a happy series, nor is it dark. It is just very intense. This is also the hardest script for me to ever write, for reasons I will soon clarify. But now, what do I mean with intense? Violet Evergarden's premise is very simple. It does very little because it knows what it sets out to do. For a story about a girl probably created just for war, there is very little action. It explains some of her more Mary Sue-ish qualities, like being very proficient about everything she does, and being a super soldier, but also becomes the source of her self-loathing as she becomes aware of her own humanity and feels guilt over her actions during the war. That being said, I looked up a thread on people with mental disorders who watched the show, and many found Violet's struggle with depression and PTSD very relatable as he grows self-aware, and so did I. The episode that grabbed me most is the one about a girl whose mother is dying. Violet is called in to write the mother's final letter to her daughter, while also having to obscure the reality from the situation to this little girl. As the mother is bedridden, Violet needs to entertain the child, but Violet never enjoyed a childhood of her own, so the most basic children's games are alien to her. Although the two characters do form a bond, the girl is angry because her mother spends all her remaining time with Violet for reasons they keep from her. The conflict being that the mother is so preoccupied with her daughter's life after she's dead, she forgets about the present situation. And the reason why I remember this episode as well, because 2 years ago I lost my father to brain cancer, and now I'm going through something similar with my mother. I know how people aware of their immediate deaths act, just like the mother in this story. My parents too were preoccupied with getting things arranged for after they died, that they forgot about a lot of other things. Like I said, it's not a happy show. The series deals with human regret and suffering, but instead of turning this into some nihilistic commentary on the human condition and the futility of life, Violet Evergarden portrays it as something painful but glorious, as an essential stepping stone in the development of human beings. That life is unfair, but it is that unfairness that makes us better people. Our suffering makes us relate to each other and helps us unite as long as we believe that people can change, and we can provide a meaningful contribution to other people's lives. However, it also reminds us that we are capable of making other people suffer if we choose to. Now, if this concept would have ended up in some Hollywood writing room, I expect Violet would have been turned into some chosen one who was destined to judge rather the well-deserved peace or something grand like that. But instead, everything is kept low-key. The conflicts are between individuals and are resolved in one episode. There is an overarching plot in which Violet needs to stop insurgents who want to start another war, but it makes sense for someone like Violet wanting to prevent this. But more on that later. Violet Evergarden has revealed to me why anime, in particular shonen like Naruto, My Superhero Academia and even Last Exile, might be so popular in the West. The Japanese style of story writing differs greatly from the current day pop culture we are familiar with. But first, what is this shonen I keep mentioning and how is it structured? Shonen is a broad term for anime and manga intended for boys aged 12 to 18, but its viewers tend to be far older than that. Its general structure often involves a young, underachieving protagonist who goes on a journey of self-improvement and exploration, accompanied by friends and a mentor character, very typical hero's journey fare. When special abilities are involved, the characters often unlock new skills or parts of their abilities by going on a journey of physical struggle and self-exploration. Fights are often just as much physical feats as they are of wit and interpersonal conflict that can last multiple episodes. Regardless, the protagonists often come out of each engagement stronger and more mature. To summarize, the act of becoming physically stronger is associated with growing up. It's not just about being wiser, but also how you interact with people. But for this structure to work, the characters must initially be immature and weak. That being said, what does this have to do with drama series about a girl writing letters? In Violet Evergarden, suffering is one of the primary driving forces of the story. In the minds, or at least in my estimation, this should not be a popular subject for a series. After all, Western protagonists should be strong, invincible, and hyper-competent. Even Captain America would jump at a grenade at the earliest opportunity. On one hand, it means he's willing to sacrifice himself, a primary quality of any hero, but he has this quality right off the bat. Give him the magical soldier juice and he's ready to be Captain America. I don't particularly call this bad writing, but this is to demonstrate what the Western audience expects from its heroes, or at least in the minds of Hollywood. Compare that to Naruto's introduction in the first episode. A boy who fails ninja school decides to help someone steal special ninja techniques so he can prove his worth. But then he gets double-crossed and one of his ninja teachers nearly sacrifices himself to save the boy. It is very clear he'll need to develop both as a person and a martial artist / wizard to become a capable ninja and become the leader of his ninja clan as he wants to. Also, this is a show about ninjas. Now, compare this to, for example, Gotham that I'm watching now. It's a show primarily about identity. It is about Bruce Wayne becoming the Batman, a vigilante who vowed to take down criminals but let the courts pass their judgment. The same goes for characters like Edward Nygma, Oswald Cobblepot, and James Gordon. They all develop into the iconic characters the Batman franchise is known for. But they're all hyper-competent from the get-go. Even Bruce Wayne is depicted to be very mature for his age. From the moment we meet him, we recognize all the elements that are part of the Batman persona. Let's compare this to My Hero Academia, a world filled with people with special abilities. But the protagonist, Izuku Midoriya, is one of the few people who is not born with a superpower. Despite this, he wants to be a superhero. At the start, Izuku comes across as someone who has set unrealistic goals for himself. However, this changes when he is granted a special ability by the hero All Might after he displays suicidal heroism as he saves someone from a supervillain. This could be seen as competence, was it not that Izuku does so against his better judgment and was terrified throughout the entire experience. Just like Izuku, most of the other shonen characters, he needs to grow both as a person and a fighter to become the superhero he dreamt of being. But they start at the bottom, below everybody else. They lack what comes naturally to most due to a disability, trauma, or a lack of parental guidance. Sure, these characters have a destiny of sorts. Naruto is possessed by a powerful spirit, and Izuku has a natural born instinct to be a genuine hero. But this destiny is pointless if they do not overcome the obstacles on their journey. And when we meet these protagonists, it's very unlikely they will. A matter of fact, they are surrounded by characters that are far more competent than they are. Out of all of these characters, the protagonists are the most unlikely of heroes among their far more competent friends. This gives me the impression this trope is nearly unique to shonen. I asked several communities if they could think of any mainstream media outside of comedy where the protagonist starts off incompetent and then work their way up from there. The only character in Western media from the last decade or so that isn't as competent as other characters is Frodo from Lord of the Rings. But that movie franchise ended in 2003. If I'm correct, this means that shonen fills a niche that is not being fulfilled by mainstream Western entertainment. Now we can explain why this particular style of writing is more popular in Japan than in the West, but this does not explain shonen's growing popularity outside of Japan. Now let's compare this to Violet's story arc. Now we already know she was a super soldier, so she is hyper competent in that department. But that's not what this show is about. The dilemma she faces cannot be forced out of existence. She's emotionally stunted, incapable of leading a normal life if this does not change. Her physical strength does not help her at all, and the fact she is fighting in the war is now destroying her. She needs to learn that despite all the suffering, there is a reason to live, and she needs to find her purpose in life. This is why her desire to stop a second war is so important. The battlefield is where she used to thrive. It was her home, while the City of Lighten was an alien world to her she didn't want to go to. But after finding her humanity, she understood she was capable of causing great suffering and she doesn't want to be that person anymore. Despite this, she will bear the consequences of her actions for the rest of her life. That is her real struggle, and that is what she wants to atone for. It's really strange to think that her realization that she is suffering is the conclusion of a story. But from what I have seen, for some people this truly is what they must do to move on during their lives. We can either resent the things that are wrong with our lives or accept it and move on. It's a very common theme in a lot of shonen. Antagonists are often motivated by the fact their life's experiences did not live up to their expectations. They developed a me against the world mentality because they believe the world owes them happiness and resents those they deem more content than themselves. They don't consider other people may have suffered too and they needed to work to get where they are. This doesn't mean the world is fair and everyone gets the same opportunities, but because you are in pain doesn't mean everybody else should. Turncoat characters are very common for this reason. They often start bad but become good when they find closure or faced with the consequences of their actions. But for this to happen, these characters need to be capable of suffering and recognize this in others. That is what makes them appealing. The audience gets involved in their struggle and their quest to get to the light side, so to speak. That is why the genuine bad guys in media are often over-the-top sadistic, callous, and sociopathic. They enjoy watching other people suffer and cannot be redeemed because they don't care about how other people feel to begin with. They may have some justification for why what they are doing is the right thing, but in the end they just like mayhem. Characters like Violet, on the other hand, are the opposite. She did not understand that people could feel pain and loss. By experiencing suffering, she started to develop these feelings and realized she needed to atone for her actions. In this regard, the shonen-like structure makes sense. Violet's robot-like demeanor is often criticized. Because it's following this shonen-like structure, it needed to be. This is not my defense of the choice, but merely an observation. Then Violet undergoes a number of trials and confrontations and learns about new aspects of human nature each time. And as she becomes more self-conscious, she becomes aware of the feelings of others. Like the situation of the daughter and the dying mother, for instance. The aforementioned Higgins postponed telling Violet the truth about the death of the Major. When Violet does find out that her superior officer is dead, Violet becomes resentful of her boss for not telling her. But when Violet is in the same situation with the girl, she too did not tell the truth about her mother dying for a long time, just like Higgins did in his situation. That is how Violet learns that telling the truth is not so easy. There's something universal about the shonen genre that appeals to people of mine and the younger generations, be it for different reasons. The teenage demographic may be drawn in by the superpowers and martial arts, but meanwhile you can find entire videos diving into the philosophies and character arcs in these shows because they deal with very human subjects everyone struggles with, no matter in what part of the world you are. Western media, on the other hand, seems to be more interested in themes that, although could be interesting, are so often skewed by bias or so open to interpretation, it is hard to relate to the characters at large. I think the reason Joker was such a hit in 2019 was because it had a very similar structure to Shonen and focused on a personal experience and how it affects his view of society to which we can relate. But that's a whole other topic. And with that, we're gonna end the last video of the year. I'm sorry, it has been a while since I posted a editorial. I'll probably will do some more streams this season, but no, I am working on a new episode of the Steampunk Beginner's Guide, which I hope to finish in January. Also, I have other plans for the second channel. For those who follow me on the community tab or the Discord, I have done a photo shoot lately with wonderful photos. And I hope to cooperate with this photographer more often for the Association of Ishtar, so we can add some wonderful photography to those short stories as well. Go check out the link if you are not aware of those yet. If you want me to make more videos where I analyze story structures or character arcs, please put them down in the comment section and I'll have a look at them for future episodes. Finally, I want to thank these wonderful people for supporting me on Subscribestar. I'm sorry for the lack of updates, but it's just holiday season, what can I say? Now I'm gonna stop this ramble. Thank you for watching, enjoy your holidays, and of course, make them your way.